Welcome to Sally Speaks Mindset podcast. I'm your host, Sally Arkell-Boles, your high performance success and mindset mentor. I firmly believe that you deserve to create the wealth, wellness, and wisdom you've always desired. This podcast is your go-to source for inspiration, education, and motivation to guide you on your path to success. Each episode features exceptional guests who are leaders in their respective fields, sharing their incredible stories and journeys to empower and uplift you. Welcome, everybody, to Sally Speaks Mindset podcast. I'm your host, Sally Arkell-Boles, and I'm a high-performance success and mindset mentor. I believe that you deserve to create the wealth, wellness, and wisdom that you've always desired. And my podcast is designed to inspire, educate, and motivate you to success. My guests are leaders in their field and have incredible stories and journeys to share with you. And today I am so excited to introduce you to Laura Rotter. Now, Laura is a CFA, a CFP, and is the owner of True Abundance Advisors, a heart-centered, values-based financial planning firm based in New York. And after a successful career managing money for institutional investors, including Citicorp and Para Advisors, Laura discovered mindfulness practices and was drawn to guide professionals facing a big life change to achieve both financial security and life satisfaction. Since making her shift, she's been featured in the New York Times, CNBC, and the Wall Street Journal, and Westchester Senior Voice, is on the advisory council of Impact100 Westchester, a women's group giving organization and volunteers with My Money Workshop, teaching financial literacy to underserved communities. So welcome, Laura.
I was so excited to be here, Sally.
I'm so excited to have you here because I know that we met about, 3 or 4 months ago. And I was just really impressed, not only with your background, but where you're taking your practice, because we've both been in financial services. And I know what it's like to be in that industry, and it's very fast paced and it can be very high stressed. So tell us a little bit about your journey leaving your corporate career and moving into what you're doing now with True Abundance Advisors.
I'd be happy to share, Sally. Briefly, I had just under a 30-year career on Wall Street. Like you said, I was an institutional investor. I focused on a small part of the event-driven investing market called distressed investing, looking at the securities of companies that were, in distress, if you will, either going into bankruptcy or restructuring so that they could stay out of bankruptcy. And I loved what I did the first 10 years. I didn't pay that much attention. I took it for granted the next 10 years. I had 3 children, pretty close in age. And though my husband became the primary caregiver, we called him Dr. Mom. He was financially and characterologically the parent to do the primary caregiving. It was a busy household, as you could imagine. But as I got into the last decade of my career, the industry had changed a lot. I've often said that it went from the nerds in high school, like myself, who realized that they could do very interesting work. I never focused on a specific industry. So if it was Tuesday, it could be the newspaper industry. If it was, it was fascinating work. And then I was a nerd in high school that could do interesting work and earned a lot of money for it. By the time I left, the industry had become the frat boys in college who were leveraging their relationships to make money, and it was all about money. I didn't share the politics. I didn't share the worldview of the people I work with. And as you noted, it was just exhausting. But I had trapped myself. I had a 6,000 square foot home. I had a vacation home. I took expensive vacations. I had 3 kids in private school, in private camps, about to attend college. I was sort of handcuffed. I felt like I can't leave. And it was only through the mindfulness practices, as you noted in my bio, that I had this epiphany that sounds silly now, but It's like, oh, I'm not going to get to do a do-over. This is it. If I'm waking up Monday morning, dreading the week ahead and dragging myself to Friday, where I could be myself, that was my choice. I was not a victim of my life, I came to recognize, but I could actually choose to be the author of my life. And so I tell the story of leaving. It's going to be 10 years now. I left November 2013, and it was an empowered leaving, and it was also sort of similar to your story. I was asked to leave. I was at the in 2013. I was working for an internal hedge fund group of Citigroup, and because of regulation, Citi needed to sell their equity stake in that hedge fund group. And so, but while they were looking to do that, they were reducing expenses, and a whole bunch of us were let go from the group, not for cause, with a very nice severance package. And that I saw as actually a gift from the universe.
Yes.
I had been the day before, I took the day off from work and went to a one-day retreat in Manhattan. And I still have my diary from that day saying, I'm going to walk into my boss's office. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to suggest changes. Let's look at each other during the morning meeting rather than have our backs to each other staring at screens. And when we want to discuss an investment idea, let's do it as a group rather than you taking one person off to the side. And I remember my husband saying, don't make waves, don't do the suggestion. And when I was looking for an opportunity to call my boss into a meeting, he called me in and again told me that a bunch of people were being let go, not for cause. And I did really see that. It's a gift that the universe said, you took control or were willing to take control, and now take the next step.
Wow. That's quite the story, because I knew a little bit about that, but I didn't know the exact details. But it's interesting how you had just decided you were going to change the dynamic of that relationship to create it the way you wanted. And yet a gift showed up that was a little different than what you expected, but
yes,
allowed you to create what you truly were looking for in your life.
Yes. And I want to add one little piece to that story, which is a couple of days later when I was home, we had back stairs. I was still in the 6,000 square foot house, and I slid down the stairs. I was fine, but I just burst out crying. And my husband, who I joke, he's a psychiatrist, but he doesn't work individually with people. He's an academic. He said to me, why are you crying? This is what you wanted, right? And I said, yes, but I've just lost my entire identity. Yes. You know, this is who I've been for close to 30 years. And now I don't know who I am and who I am going to become. And so the paradoxes of life, right? We hold both knowing that it was time for me to move on from a career that was no longer serving me, and also being, scared out of my mind. Like, who am I now? And what am I going to do next?
Yeah. And I think that's, something that is very common with people, where we hold our identity to the position that we have in our career. And I see that a lot with retirees as well, as when they actually retire, they actually don't know who they are, because they've tied themselves so much to the identity of their position, or, the authority that they had in their career. And yet when they retire or leave their company or are asked to leave, they're like lost, because they're like, oh my gosh, who am I now? And, in the corporation that I was with as well, there was a lot of high leaders that were let go the same year for similar reasons of restructuring. And it was like, some of them are still really struggling with the fact that their 30-year career ended abruptly. And who am I now? What am I going to do next? Am I going to do anything next? All of those questions are still ruminating. So now, how did you overcome that? How did you overcome that feeling of that, who am I and what is my identity now?
So, great question. First of all, I'd love to say that I totally overcame it. I think, this journey of entrepreneurship is really a journey of self-growth in a way that I didn't anticipate. And I think the question is always there of sort of wanting to establish a firm identity. And it's always being created. So I still remember reading a book, 90 Days to a New Life Direction. I think it's written by a woman, Laura Berman Fortgang. I'm not 100% sure. And one of her suggestions was choose 3 careers, whether or not they make sense. Her example was like clown, if you feel like, pick 3 careers and choose 3 people to interview who are in that career. Actually started this work while still working on Wall Street. The 3 careers I chose were yoga teacher. And I interviewed some of my yoga teachers and did end up doing a yoga teacher training.
Nice.
And did teach yoga for a little bit after work in my home to some of my friends. I chose rabbi because I was always very spiritual. And I interviewed 3 friends of mine who had become rabbis later in life, and they all love going to school and writing papers. And I quickly said, no, I don't think that's true. And then the last one I chose was financial advisor for women. I thought, well, I've been in the financial industry again for close to 30 years. And I liked women, having worked mostly with, as I say, dudes on trading desks for a long time. And in doing that interviewing, I actually ended up, informational interviewing with a woman who owned her own financial planning firm. It was it still is, a franchise of Ameriprise. And she actually said, why don't you consider joining me? And so in May 2014, I did, as was coming to end of my severance, I did join that firm. And that was very helpful. I was there just for under 2 years in learning about financial planning and working with individuals. I stayed there, like I said, just under 2 years. I really, love that firm. And I learned about what they call the retail industry and how working for a broker dealer, in addition to financial planning, there are product sales. And I was not comfortable with product sales. I had very intentionally left a lucrative career with no expectation that this new career would be anywhere near as lucrative as my previous one. I saw it as a mission. And I wanted to work with people independent of them giving me money to manage, and with no pressure, therefore, to raise a certain amount of what they call assets under management, and no pressure to sell insurance or sell annuities and I became aware of the fee-only planning industry. And so, like I said, just under 2 years working with this firm, I decided to hang out my shingle and go on my own. So I have the papers of naming my firm True Abundance Advisors in somewhere around June 2016. So I'm into my 8th year. of running my own firm.
That's awesome. So what I'm hearing is there was a lot of exploration between that period of 2014 to 2016 to say, is this the right fit for me? How can I create it differently? So with True Abundance Advisors, I love the name, by the way, because I think that's really truly what people are wanting to embrace, is that abundance. And abundance comes in so many different ways, as you know, and as you bring in your practice. So tell us how you crafted your practice and what your main mission and desire was within that practice.
I would love to. Thank you for asking, Sally. So, first of all, the name, I had a cousin who's a physician who he's always looking for, the next greatest investment. And he said, "What does true abundance mean?" And I said, "David, you are not my target market." My target market was really people similar to me who had financial abundance and yet were unhappy. I'm describing myself, but I think there are, three scarce resources I focus on, which are, of course, money, but also time and also energy. And looking at my own life, I had traded off time and energy for money. And it certainly served me. I was able to, raise, send my kids to college without them having to take loans and, take wonderful vacations and, and put me in the position to make the choice, that I made in 2016, which is, right, to start my own firm and to not worry about earning money at the beginning. I originally, as I said, thought that I would serve primarily women, and yet have found that I work primarily with couples, and also some single men who recognize that there is more to life than accumulating. Most of the people I work with, are straddling the age of 50. And I do think as you get older, you do realize that there is, not everyone realizes this, but that it's important to ask the question, what is enough? And if people come to me and say, I want you to beat the market, or I want to be in some sexy investments, buy some Bitcoin, I tell them there are plenty of advisors I can introduce them to who would be happy to promise them the moon. I, having come from a background of, hedge funds at this point are often defined by their fee structure, which is, most hedge funds now charge about 2% of assets under management and then take 20% of whatever, return is earned in the year. That's why it's a lucrative job to manage money in a hedge fund structure. That I've come to believe that if you have the ability to beat the market, and I think that's a question, I don't think people can do that consistently. And if you can, you will have the yachts and you will have the large houses and not your clients. So when I manage money for my clients who are not institutions, they're, what is defined as the mass affluent, I keep fees low and I mimic the market. And more, I'm also working with people who are interested in investing in line with their values. That's a different discussion. And I really see my mission, only love is the sign that I have hanging here. My mission is to create a safe space for people to talk about money. I mean, there's a lot of shame and anxiety, no matter what the size of your assets are. And I help my clients both explore the stories around money that they grew up with to sort of normalize their views about money for themselves, perhaps for their partners, if they're in a partnership, when they voice it to each other. And to make people aware that there's a lot more that goes into financial planning than just the money management. There's tax planning, there's estate planning, there's, protection planning, making sure you have enough insurance. And so it really feels like a calling to do this work for people who are open to it.
Yeah, I love that, because what I'm hearing is that not only have you stepped away from the retail sector of finance.
Well, I'm actually in the retail sector. Like there's
but a different perspective on it.
Yes.
Right, a different way of handling it. But at the same time, going to the fee only sort of changes that whole dynamic, and it's more about the value you're adding to your clients and having open discussions, and to really make sure that they understand each other. Because having been in finance before myself, I understand there's a lot of differences in couples' opinions on how to manage money and what to do with the money. And so it really takes an expertise from an advisor to be able to navigate that with ease, and to make sure that all parties are satisfied with the decisions that they make. But what I'm hearing is also that you're giving them that safe place to talk openly without that judgment, and with understanding that there is more to a financial plan and their true abundance as they're growing together. And that, I think, is where I'm seeing the difference from what, some of the environments that I've come from to what you're offering to your clients now. And I think that's a beautiful transition for us, and especially in an era where it has been all about building wealth in whichever way people were taught to build wealth, or where they chose to build wealth. And the idea of you saying that, your fees are lower, but you mimic the market, as opposed to trying to control what you think the market is going to be doing. You're mimicking the market for the clients.
Yes. Having come from a 30-year career of, the president says this, so let's move into that asset. Yes. And again, institutions are large enough to have sleeves of different kinds of investments. But normal people like us, it's just not that important to be so diversified. It's more important to understand your tolerance for risk. That's one of the things I do before I invest people's money. I walk them through what might have happened to the portfolio in, let's say, 2008 or 2020. And because the one thing I want to make sure doesn't happen is when the market trades down, and at that point, it's only on paper, right?
Yes.
That I get the phone call because there's an inability to tolerate the numbers on the statement. So I'd make that very clear that we are only going to change the portfolio when your life changes. We're not going to change the portfolio in response to market changes, because over time, if you stick with it, and the time horizon I generally think of for most of my clients is 7 to 15 years, let's say. If you're going to stick with it that long, the market will likely go up over time. Again, if you believe in capitalism and innovation and growth. And I want to say, recently a client said to me, my husband and I have had conversations with you, and we're married over 30 years, and we've never talked about these things together before we met you. So it's gratifying to hear things like that.
Yeah. And I think that, as you're talking about that safe environment, and just even listening to your voice on this podcast, it's just such a calming energy that you have that allows people to feel very comfortable in speaking with you. And so I think that is one of your genius zones, is being able to have that ability to really navigate relationships, because it is very difficult in a live situation like that. And I've been in them myself, where there are opposite directions that people are believing in their financial future, which is one of the most important things in a relationship. but it's one of the ones that, like you said, we don't really talk about because we have differing views. But the ability that you have to be able to navigate that is just one of the things that I think a lot of people should recognize and take note of, because it definitely is a unique skill set. And I appreciate that you're talking about that. So now, how do you take your clients from not just investing in the money, but also looking to not just the accumulation that you're talking about, but how are they changing their lives because of what the direction is on what you're suggesting? Because I know you have some holistic elements in your practice as well that really help people to discover beyond what they've been doing to be able to contribute back to society or to things that are important to them. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I'd be happy to talk about how I work with clients. And I would love to say that, everyone I work with, changes their lives. And I work with human beings. And so large scale change is difficult for most. I will say I pretty early on, when I started, discovered that I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. So there are a number of life planning organizations that I'm a member of or done training with. Money Quotient was the first one I found. And I use their questionnaires when I first meet with a prospect. They have a financial satisfaction survey, again, that goes into different areas of one's life, so that it's clear that we're not just, managing a portfolio. And they also have a financial transition survey. So when I meet with someone, I'm already aware of the transitions they're anticipating coming up in their lives, both now, perhaps soon, and then later. I've also done training with gentleman George Kinder, who's known as the father of financial life planning. He's a Buddhist and a life planner. And Susan Bradley, who originally started her institute with the name Sudden Money, because she saw people with large earnings, like from lotteries or awards, settlement awards, and then blowing the money, like with the first year. Now she calls it financial transitionist. So I've also trained with her. And so that's sort of a background to, plus, as I just said to you, Sally, I just came back from a silent meditation retreat. I've been on several. I'm a daily meditator, so I bring my own worldview into my meetings with clients. And then when we first work together, my first meeting is very qualitative. We talk about money stories as well as communication, how people communicate. Are they visual learners? Do they learn by doing? How should I interpret it if they don't speak a lot? Should I assume that they have questions? Should I assume that they're just not talkative? So I think understanding clients' communication strategies is very important. And so as we lead up to the first meeting, I'm collecting information. There's a lot of information to collect, from account statements and tax returns and Social Security here in the States. So I guess I'm making it clear, as opposed to when I worked for a broker dealer, we're not like immediately moving assets over. As a matter of fact, the discussion about how to reinvest or restructure the portfolio if it's needed doesn't come to my third meeting, unless I've said this, unless someone comes to me and they own all Bitcoin futures on margin or something. By and large, people don't have frightening portfolios. I just have a strongly held view about how they should be invested. But it's generally not an emergency. And it's much more important for me to understand cash flow. Flow, it's such a simple idea, right?
Yes.
You should earn more than you spend. And most people, because of the way we all operate with credit cards that get have no, or don't have a clue, or don't have a firm of like, how much are you spending each month?
Mm-hmm.
So I do help people look at their household finances almost like a business, which is, what's your overhead? How
Mm.
much are you going to spend each month, even if you never get out of bed? Right?
Yes.
You're going to pay your rent or your mortgage. You're going to pay your electricity. You're going to pay your cell phone bill. You're going to pay your gym membership. You're going to pay Hulu, whatever your recurring charges that are basically the same each month. What are those? And ideally, those are not more than like a third to
Mm.
maybe 50% of what's coming in. And when I say what's coming in, it's not your gross salary, it's after taxes, and it's even after retirement savings. Because so what's in your bank? Because you want to make sure there's enough left for fun.
Yes.
There's enough left for savings so that when your roof needs to be replaced or your tires blow, you're not suddenly putting it on a credit card. So,
Mm.
so cash flow is really, I mean, I've had people come to me, oh, I just got this money. How should I invest it? And it's like, well, do you have an emergency fund? No. Are you spending, are you blowing through a certain amount of money each month?
Mm.
Can't invest that money because, like I said earlier, I tell people to have at least a 7 to 15-year horizon. If you're going to potentially need the money in a year or in a, let alone a month, don't put it in the stock market.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then after the qualitative meeting and the cash flow meeting, then the third time we meet, we're talking about rebalancing the investment portfolio. And again, I don't require, since I charge a flat fee rather than an assets under management fee, I don't require that people move their money over to me. That being said, everyone I work with, I manage their money because, yeah, unbelievably, I have people come to me saying, I work with Morgan Stanley and they manage my money, but like, do I have enough? Can I retire? And I'm like, well, I'm going to charge very similar to what Morgan Stanley is charging you. So you can pay for both of us, but, it's not really going to make sense. And I can't really, at the end of the day, give you a financial plan if I don't agree with how the money is managed. One of the first people who came to me said, my money is managed by my college roommate who is a hedge fund manager, and it's all small company stocks invested on margin. I said, well, I can't give you a financial plan because we could wake up tomorrow and 40% of your assets are gone. So, so I do have a view about managing assets. And part of that view is, again, there's no magic in managing assets. It's just being patient and keeping your fees low.
Excellent. So what I'm hearing is there's 3 different phases to actually even starting to really work with the client. So you're offering some information in the first one, gathering a lot of information. Then you're looking at their mindset surrounding money and where their challenges might be, where they're currently sitting, and then talking about what you could actually do to help them with that plan. And I love that because it really allows you to get to know the clients extremely well, and probably at a much deeper level than they've ever had a conversation with an advisor before. So heads up, advisors that might be listening. But definitely, I think, the way that you're approaching your clients and your business is so different than what most of us have been exposed to. So I love the model that you're offering. Now, how do you bring that that holistic approach that you're using in your life to be able to create this for yourself? So I know that you do a lot of yoga and meditation, and you're very athletic. And so you do a lot of practices yourself to keep yourself grounded. So do you mind sharing a little bit about that and then how that spills over into your business?
Such an interesting question, Sally, because I do remember one of the first clients I worked with, he had come from working with an advisor who had given him this color-coded folder system, colored for the chakras. And you take a look at my face, like, I myself asked, how do I bring these mindfulness practices into the work I do. And certainly at this point, my answer to that is just in the space I create and how I hold myself. I've thought perhaps of maybe having, I don't even know, a minute would probably freak people out. Like when I first start a session, let's take, a moment to ground. And I've never done it. Does that mean to say that I won't do it in the future? I don't know. But right now, that is not part of my planning practice. I guess for me, and this is maybe not directly responsive to the question, but as you know, the journey of an entrepreneur isn't a journey of commitment, because there'll be ups and there'll be downs and there'll be busy periods and slower periods. And I make a commitment to so many things in my life. I'm committed to my exercise. I'm committed to my meditation practice. And so I think that the word that keeps coming up in my mind is tenacity. I don't know, but, has kept me going. And again, an appreciation for my financial ability to stay with the business when, it took a while to get off the ground. And I remain mission driven, so that perhaps at times where it seems slower, I remind myself that the way I provide financial planning advice is, I live in New York, so when you're unique, there are millions of people like you, but it is unique. and that I'm serving the people I work with in a way that they wouldn't be able to be served elsewhere. Yeah. And that keeps me going.
Nice. And I think, part of health is really looking after yourself first. Especially if you're serving other people, we want to make sure that we're in the right energy, the right mindset, the right feeling within our own bodies, that we're able to be present for our clients and to serve them in a way that's going to be impactful for them. And I think by having these practices yourself, it automatically shows in the work that you're doing and the results that you're getting for your clients, because you're allowing yourself to be out of what I noticed when I was in my corporate career, probably same as you, that it was a really dynamic, fast-moving, fast-paced business with a lot of expectation on the results, and not really focusing on the people as much. And so I think that's a big part of the growth that we have today, and understanding the value of having ourselves in a position where we're that centered person when we go into any meeting, so that we can be fully present with them and not have all this other energy or distraction going on within our head and our bodies that's going to take us away from really that focus. So I appreciate your practices that you're doing, and any insights that you want to share in that.
I guess one of the things I think about as you say that, Sally, is that though I don't do a centering practice with my clients, I certainly make sure to take about 5 minutes before meetings, because it's so easy to just rush from one thing to the other. Just say, let's just sit. Let's take some deep breaths. Get my sign here, only love. Remind myself why I do this work, what kind of space I want to create before at this point, most of my meetings are on Zoom, before I, admit into the Zoom room, if you will. Yeah. And I hope that that's a vibration that's felt by, whether it's clients or prospects, or even in this conversation, that's felt in the conversations that I have.
Awesome. I'm sure it definitely is, because I can absolutely feel it every time I'm on a call with you. I just feel that groundedness and that calmness and just that presence that you have. So I appreciate that immensely. So how can people find you?
So my website is True Abundance Advisors with an O. trueabundanceadvisors.com. My email address, if you want to reach out, is Laura, Laura, at trueabundanceadvisors.com. I do have a workbook on my website, which is Unblocking Your Money Blocks.
Nice.
Sort of a worksheet to work through. And I also have a podcast. My podcast is called Making Change with Your Money. I interview women such as yourself who have been through a big life transition, and they share their journeys and stories, as well as people who serve women in life transitions. I've interviewed an estate planning attorney who works with women in divorce. I've interviewed a real estate broker, helps people downsizing their homes. I really, that also is a labor of love. And I hope that those stories help guide other women who may be in the midst of a transition to know that there is another side and that you can come through it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And we will put all of those links up with the podcast so everybody can access them. And Laura, I really appreciate your time today. And it's been just an absolute pleasure to get to learn a little bit more about your story, but also the way that you show up in service to your clients. And I think it's a very unique approach. And it's also obviously very successful. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Sally. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you for tuning in to Sally Speaks Mindset podcast. We hope this episode has inspired and empowered you on your quest for success and personal growth. If you're ready to take your success journey to new heights, connect with me, Sally Arkell-Boles, your high-performance success and mindset mentor. Whether you're an executive, entrepreneur, or part of a dynamic team, I'm here to help you navigate challenges, supercharge your mindset, and drive exceptional results. Together, we'll embrace a transformative approach, breaking through limitations and opening doors to uncharted territory. No matter your industry or profession, my mission is to empower you to excel. From leadership development and sales excellence to personal empowerment, we'll tailor a journey that aligns with your unique goals. Connect with me and start your transformational journey today. Let's collaborate on unleashing your full potential and creating a future filled with success and growth. Don't forget to follow, like, comment, and share to spread empowerment. You can find more about me and connect with me through the links provided in the show notes. Thank you for being part of the Sally Speaks Mindset podcast community. Stay empowered, stay motivated, and keep working towards the success you deserve.